This is The War Empire, a podcast where the past meets the future.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Hope you're having a great day. I'm excited to dive into today's episode because we're talking about one of the most epic showdowns in ancient history, the Battle of Thermopylae. This legendary fight was a key event in the Persian-Greek Wars, where the small, united Greek forces faced off against the massive Persian Empire. You've probably heard of it, maybe through the movie 300 or one of the many retellings. But today, we're going to explore the real story, the strategy, the drama, and the heroic last stand that defined this moment in history. It's a story of courage, sacrifice, and grit against overwhelming odds. So grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's head back to 480 BCE. Let's kick things off with some background. By the time we get to Thermopylae, the Persian Empire has been on a roll for years. Around 492 BCE, King Darius of Persia started making his moves to invade Greece. That plan hit a bump when the Greeks, especially the Athenians, scored a huge win at the Battle of Marathon in 490 BCE that we covered in the previous episode. Fast forward a few years to 486 BCE, and Xerxes, Darius' son, takes over the Persian throne. Xerxes was not going to let that defeat slide. By July 480 BCE, he's ready to give it another shot and launches a full-scale invasion of mainland Greece. This invasion was massive. Xerxes' army was said to be anywhere between 70,000 to 300,000 strong. It's one of those history versus legend numbers, but one thing's for sure, it was a lot of people. The Persian Empire was a powerhouse, and Xerxes had every intention of steamrolling over Greece. So, how do you stop a massive army like the Persians? Simple. You pick a spot where their numbers don't matter as much. The Greeks chose Thermopylae, a narrow pass between a mountain and the sea, perfect for making the Persian forces funnel through in smaller groups. It's a natural choke point where the geography gives the Greeks a fighting chance. Thermopylae even means hot gates because of the nearby hot springs. How fitting for a showdown like this. Before the famous Spartans even arrived, the Phocians, a Greek tribe, were the first ones at Thermopylae. They knew how important this spot was and immediately started fixing up an old wall to make it tougher for the Persians to break through. They also kept an eye on the Enopaia Path, a hidden mountain trail that could be a game changer if the Persians found it. Eventually, the Greek forces grew to about 7,000 soldiers, coming from various city-states like Thespiae, Thebes, and Corinth. Then, Leonidas showed up with his 300 Spartans. Now, 300 doesn't seem like a lot, but these weren't just any soldiers. They were his personal guard, the best of the best. The Spartans brought along some helots, serfs, to assist them, and while their numbers were small, their presence was meant to inspire the rest of Greece to stand up against Persia. Now, you might be wondering, why did Leonidas only bring 300 Spartans? Was he underestimating the Persian army? Nope. It was all about tradition and timing. Sparta was in the middle of celebrating a religious festival called Carneia, which meant they couldn't send their full army. But Leonidas and his 300 were there to make a statement. They were ready to defend Greece, no matter the cost. It wasn't about the numbers, it was about setting an example for the rest of the Greek city-states. The Greeks had to come together or face certain defeat. Enter King Leonidas of Sparta, the man who would lead the defense at Thermopylae. Leonidas wasn't just any king. He was a battle-hardened warrior, and when Greece needed someone to stand up against Persia, he stepped up. As the Greeks prepared for battle, they worked on narrowing the pass even more, using rocks and timber to build up their defenses. They knew the layout of Thermopylae would give them a crucial edge, letting their smaller forces hold off the Persians. When Xerxes and his massive army finally showed up, he was so confident of victory that he didn't even attack right away. Instead, he sent messengers to the Greeks demanding their surrender. What did Leonidas say in response? Molon labe, or in modern terms, come and get them. The Greeks weren't going down without a fight, and Leonidas' reply became a rallying cry for resistance against tyranny. The Persians had brought everything with them: infantry, cavalry, archers, war chariots. They expected an easy victory, but they hadn't counted on the determination of the Greek defenders. When the fighting started, the Persians attacked in waves, but the narrow pass at Thermopylae worked in the Greeks' favor. The Persians, in their light armor, were no match for the heavily armored Greeks, who fought in a phalanx, a tight formation where each soldier protected the one next to him with his shield, and they all jabbed their spears forward. It was brutal, but effective. For 2 days, the Persians threw everything they had at the Greeks, but it wasn't enough. The Greek formations held strong, and the Persians couldn't break through. Picture this: narrow pass, thousands of Persian soldiers trying to push through, but every time they got close, the Spartans and their allies pushed them back with brutal precision. Leonidas and his men weren't just about defense. They fought smart, using their terrain advantage and tight formations to block and counterattack, making it nearly impossible for the Persians to gain any ground. Morale was high, and the Greeks were making Xerxes sweat. On the first day alone, it's said that the Persians lost thousands of men. The Greeks rotated their troops in shifts, so they always had fresh soldiers on the front lines. Just when things were looking up for the Greeks, disaster struck. A local Greek named Ephialtes decided to switch sides. He told Xerxes about a secret path, the Enopeia Trail, that would let the Persians sneak around behind the Greek defenses. Why did Ephialtes betray his fellow Greeks? It's hard to say. Some think he did it for money. Others say it was personal revenge. Whatever the reason, his betrayal changed the course of the battle. Xerxes wasted no time. Under cover of night, he sent his troops through the Enopeia path, and by the next morning, the Greeks were surrounded. They had Persians in front of them and behind them, cutting off any chance of escape. Realizing they were outflanked, Leonidas made a tough decision. He ordered most of the Greek forces to retreat, knowing they couldn't hold out much longer. But he and his 300 Spartans, along with 700 loyal Thespians, stayed behind to fight to the death. They knew they wouldn't survive, but they were buying time for the rest of Greece to prepare for the Persian invasion. On the final day, the remaining Greeks fought like warriors possessed. When their weapons broke, they used their bare hands. Leonidas himself fought fiercely, but eventually he was killed. His men tried to protect his body, even as the Persian forces swarmed them. By the end of the day, the Greeks were wiped out. Technically, the Persians won the Battle of Thermopylae, but it came at a huge price. They lost thousands of soldiers, and the Greek stand at Thermopylae gave the rest of Greece enough time to organize their defenses. In the months that followed, the Greeks would go on to win crucial victories at the battles of Salamis and Plataea, pushing the Persians out of Greece. Leonidas and his 300 Spartans became legendary. Their sacrifice symbolized courage, honor, and the willingness to stand up for what you believe in, even when the odds are against you. The phrase molon labe has echoed through history, a reminder of that defiant spirit. Over time, the story of Thermopylae has become synonymous with the Spartans. But it's important to remember that they weren't alone. Other Greek city-states, like the Thespians and Phocians, also played crucial roles in the battle. Their contributions often get overshadowed by the focus on the 300 Spartans, but they too fought bravely and sacrificed for Greece. The story of Thermopylae is more than just a tale of heroism. It's a reminder that history is full of complexities. The Battle of Thermopylae showed that a small, determined force could stand up to a much larger one, and it inspired future generations to fight for freedom and justice. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the Battle of Thermopylae. We've uncovered the real story behind the myth, from Leonidas' brave stand to the unsung heroes who fought alongside the Spartans. Stay tuned for more epic moments from history, because there's always more to learn.